Good morning and welcome. My talk today is Doubt as Devotion and Questioning as an Act of Love. I love the song Picture This by Matt and Savannah Shaw, partly because it's not afraid to express doubts. After a moment of comfortable dreams, what if I was wrong all along? What if all it takes is a moment believing? What if all we wanted was there all along? Now, this is especially meaningful if you consider that Matt worked in real estate. He always loved singing and musical theater, and he once attended college on a vocal performance scholarship. But he put these musical aspirations on the back burner to raise a family. And then his life changed during COVID-19 pandemic when his shy teenager, Savannah, asked her dad to sing the prayer with her. Now, what began as a simple closet recording to connect with friends exploded into a whole new life. And today, Matt and Savannah Shaw balance their music career with touring, recording, and their mission, which is to spread hope and share joy through music. And so, asking the question, what if all it takes is a moment believing? And what if all we wanted was there all along? And that is the idea of doubt. How can I honor my doubts as signposts and guides rather than something that stops me in my tracks? See, all month long, we've been exploring the potential beauty and vulnerability of this thing we're calling divine doubt. And as you might have heard, the opposite of faith is not doubt, but the opposite of faith is certainty. Because if you refuse to engage in doubt, then our faith is weakened by forcing it to be rigidly believed rather than actually lived. And so we started the month focusing on vulnerability and the transformative guiding power of leaning into doubt. And then later on, we progressed into using divine doubt to build communities willing to question, to wonder, to engage their doubt with a web of love. And finally, today we're closing this month of divine doubt out with doubt as devotion and questioning as an act of love. And so, as we reflect on the month, we explored divine doubt as a pathway to becoming and to a higher and deeper expression of love. And so, taken together, we recognize that we surrender to vulnerability and then we trust the universal process. Now, doubt is often warranted, even when it comes to something perfectly legitimate. Case in point, FBI agents conducted a raid of a psychiatric hospital in California that was under investigation for medical insurance fraud. Now, after hours and hours of reviewing thousands of medical records, the dozens of agents had worked up quite an appetite, you can imagine. So the agent in charge of the investigation called a nearby pizza parlor with a delivery, and he wanted to order a quick dinner for his colleagues. And so the following telephone conversation took place, and it was recorded by the FBI because they were taping all the conversations at the hospital. So this is what happened. The agent said, "Hello, I'd like to order 19 large pizzas and 67 cans of soda." Pizza man, "And where would you like them delivered?" Agent, "We're over at the psychiatric hospital." Pizza man, "The psychiatric hospital." Agent, "That's right. I'm an FBI agent." "You're an FBI agent?" "That's correct. Just about everybody here is." "And you're at the psychiatric hospital?" "That's correct. And make sure you don't go through the front doors. We have them locked. You have to go around to the back service entrance to deliver the pizzas." "And you say you're all FBI agents?" "That's right. How soon can you have the pizzas here?" "Everyone at the psychiatric hospital is an FBI agent?" "That's right. We've been here all day and we're starving." "How are you going to pay for all this?" my checkbook right here. And you're all FBI agents. That's right. Everyone here is an FBI agent. And you remember to bring the pizzas and sodas to the serpent's entrance in the rear. We have the front doors locked. Yeah, sure. Often we think that it's to voice doubt or concern is to reject something. Well, you can see that there's often a time for doubt, and sometimes it's seen as argumentative, seen as derogatory, or even impolite. However, science of mind teaches us that curiosity and exploration are fundamental, and they're fundamental to this thing we're calling divine life. And so doubting, rather than being an insult, is an act of devotion. What if we believed that the doubt, the questioning, was actually an act of devotion? Rephrasing this as divine doubt invites us to see doubt not as the enemy or the opposite of faith, but as one of the ways that we are drawn deeper into faith. Doubt asks us to question those inherited answers, things that we're just told or taught. And we listen beneath that uncertainty and discover that there is wisdom hidden inside this wrestling with the truth. Consider contemplative meditation. We contemplate, we consider, we think about things. Divine doubt reminds us that the question itself may be holy and that the spirit is not threatened by our wondering. That's why we got curiosity. So, our affirmation today: love is the foundation of my questions and curiosities. In Science of Mind, we pride ourselves actually in not being a dogmatic theology, and we don't claim to have all the answers, but we do have methods of seeking those answers and of adjusting once new information comes to light. This is why we say we're open at the top. But if we don't have that inkling of doubt, we can't even begin the exploration in the first place. So, as we continue to look at doubt as a sacred act of love, and it is one of the many steps necessary to craft a healthy and living, alive, a vibrant faith. Paul Tillich, in his Dynamics of Faith, tells us doubt is not the opposite of faith, it is an element of faith. So we know that Science of Mind is based on the idea that our thoughts and actions are powerful and that we can use them to shape a deeper experience of God and a better world. So our thoughts and actions are powerful. And doubt can be a method for finding that deeper and higher love necessary to creating that world that works for everyone. And doubt often, well, it offers us the opportunity to notice what we need and question the status quo and wonder, what is possible? What is possible? And so doubt is helpful in that it breeds curiosity. It leads us to seek even further. It is the foundation of a practical faith. David Felton, in his book, Living the Questions, The Wisdom of Progressive Christianity, says this. He says, seekers who are comfortable with ambiguity understand that through difficulties, mistakes, and challenges, it's the journey that's important. It's what we learn along the way in relationship to the divine and to one another that matters most. It takes work as we go down the road, sharing our experiences, our questions, and our uncertainties with one another and with the divine. No matter what you believe, if you're honest, you'll face some measure of doubt. Is what I believe true? Can we know what's true? Do I believe what I believe because it's true or because I've had some personal experience? Is this what I was taught? And have I reasonably considered other options? An insightful person once said, "You can live a life of faith interrupted by moments of doubt, or you can live a life of doubt interrupted by moments of faith. Either way, doubts are inevitable." And nobody lives their life on absolute certainty. There's nothing that we're absolutely certain of. Often we say death and taxes, and that's about it. So faith is not that belief in the absence of evidence. Faith is a trust, which rests on sufficient evidence that one thing is more plausible than the alternative. In other words, you don't need 100% certainty to believe something. It just needs to be more true than false. For example, um, can you believe that Antarctica exists, although most of us have never been there? Can you be sure that George Washington was president of the United States? What can you believe the house will sell? I can answer yes to all of these. Why? Because it's plausible. Every day we're faced with a decision. We always, although unconsciously sometimes, go with the side that we believe to be the most plausible of the two, even if we're not 100% sure. And so we have doubts, and those doubts that we question lead us to a deeper faith. Now, there are lots of worldviews, philosophies, and religions, and they explain aspects of how the world works and why and how and why we are the way we are, but none of them explain it for me as well as science of mind. And so I have to look at, well, what are the other options? In other words, what might be true, and why would that explanation be better and more probable? And so here's the conversation I have with doubt. Okay, doubt. Sometimes you're loud and a bit troubling, but what are the other options? What alternative is there that more adequately explains how life works? And so this is an example of honoring doubts as a signpost and shifting from that fear, moving into curiosity and treating this uncertainty. I don't know if you've ever had any yourself, but uncertainty at times, it's like, how could this happen? And so that's a signal to investigate rather than to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, what have I used the doubt to clarify what I believe? And part of that is identifying specific questions rather than staying in this nebulous area, and treat those questions as catalysts for growth and self reflection. So, what if doubt brings us to a deeper faith in this living alive philosophy of science of mind? What if by doubting we move into a deeper way of loving divine spirit and loving one another, and allowing doubt to serve as a starting point for deeper exploration rather than clinging to, oh my goodness, stagnant or outdated practices? I am so guilty of this. I don't even sometimes like the questions, but I've gotten more used to question. It's like, okay, how can I use this question? See, the goal is not to create a life or a spirituality that is free of questions or doubt, but that we can grow alongside. And as we grow and our life changes in various and different ways, what about using that as a way to delve deeper into this very practical faith that makes space for doubt and uses it to explore? And what if doubt is a call to accountability. Now, sometimes we doubt institutions and systems. And, for a long time, it's like, oh, I thought that was really working. Everything was perfect and moving right along. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, but some people have been left out of that system. I didn't know that. So now I have to doubt, is that the right thing? And so this doubt in our institutions and systems calls us to call them to uphold their values and operate in integrity with the highest good for all. And so by doubting and questioning, then we collectively demand better action and a change in the systems to create this world that works for everything. See, one of the best things about Centers for Spiritual Living is that we're not based in restrictive dogma or obligated to maintain the dictates of the past. Now, I really like solid, unchanging things. But that's not how life works. It's just not. We have to remain open at the top. We've been told this for years and years, remain open at the top. Uh, and so that's our job. And this doubt helps us notice where we're not currently living into this mandate and where we're closed off to the potential of life that's not in it's just not on our path. So doubt in institutions keeps those institutions accountable. Doubt in the divine helps us seek the divine in new ways. Doubt in ourselves uncovers new truths about ourselves. And I know sometimes this doubt comes rolling in like a fog bank, and it's easy to get lost in that, and you get turned around and disoriented. So, how do we honor our doubts as guides? How can we work with doubts? Well, first of all, we know recognizing. So maybe journaling, right? Record your doubts in a journal and write about it, kind of clarify that a little bit. That's a way to honor the doubts as guidepost. And in that, um, be specific. So identify specific questions rather than allowing that doubt to feel like this all encompassing darkness or fog. And then address the doubt. So, where is this doubt coming from? Is there some incident that happened? Is there a different way to look at that? And as you identify the question, you may find that, what felt like the fog is simply lifting, and now it was maybe just a little mist. Rainier Marie Rilke says in his letters to a poet, be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. And so by bringing these questions into the open, we treat doubt as something that needs to be exposed, not hidden or feared. And so in that, then we seek wisdom. We discuss these doubts, these questions with mentors or knowledgeable people who can help us see things a different way to gain new perspectives. You might turn to a practitioner. So, and the practitioner will help clarify things and maybe ask some questions. And then take action. Defy your doubt. The action can dilute the power of doubt and build confidence. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 10, it is written, prove me now herewith, which means test me, put me to the test. In the Science Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes writes, one of the great difficulties in the new order of thought is that we are likely to indulge in too much theory and too little practice. As a matter of fact, we only know as much as we can prove by actual demonstration. That which we cannot prove may or may not be true, but that which we can prove certainly must be and is the truth. And so, how do we start this? How do we start to prove things? Well, I suggest starting with spiritual mind treatment. And maybe one of the first spiritual mind treatments is show me. Show me what is true. Show me what is true about this specific instance. And then ask the divine spirit to illuminate your thinking, bringing clarity. Maybe that's the place to start with treatment. So as we come into these doubts and fears, identify them and defy them, then we get clarity. And that is how doubt and questioning turns into an act of love, because we've become clearer. Our faith is deeper. In the book, Bringing the Practice of Ministry to Life, there's a quote: whatever spirituality is not something to be discovered, it's something to be recovered, something that you misplace and recover 1,000 times in a lifetime. Ernest Holmes says, what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. And the famous quote of his, I would rather see a student of this science prove its principles than to have him repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. And so all of this comes down to our practice. And so after looking at this, it's appropriate to embrace doubts rather than discard them, because they really never go away unless you investigate and dig into them. And then allow those doubts to inform and expand our spiritual perspective. See, faith can be understood in many ways. Belief is one, but it's not the only one. In an active spiritual practice like science of mind, doubt is a pathway to deeper faith, a sign that something needs attention or explanation, an indication that we have strayed from our spiritual alignment. So what if it's appropriate to embrace doubts rather than discard them? And certainty, by contrast, can be more limiting. It often closes us off to new insights and possibilities. I know of things that I am very certain of sometimes comes across as arrogant, not open. And so being open, being curious, wondering, embracing the doubt opens that door to greater fulfillment, more expansive spiritual life. I leave you with a quote by Paul Stephen Dunhoff. This is freedom to doubt. He says, the freedom to doubt, to question, to be content to live in mystery is central to the liberal religious tradition. Like the process of evolution itself, the path we follow, our practice, is not easy or simple. It isn't without its dead ends or its disappointments. It doesn't guarantee that all of our conclusions will be final, or that we will ever find an answer to all of our questions. But also, like the process of evolution, it is filled with great expressions of beauty and awe that are sometimes born of great struggle, and at other times come as unexpected grace. So let's take that thought into our spiritual mind treatment. Unexpected grace. And so I begin this treatment with the knowing that there is a power, a presence, a divine source. I know this because it has been proven over and over again in my life. And so whenever I have that doubt or fear, I return to that example of love. I return to the things that I see, that I understand as spirit: love, peace, prosperity, joy, the qualities of spirit. And that's how I know the divine exists, because I've lived in that divine state of love, that state of bliss. And so I know it exists. I know there's a power or presence, by whatever name we call it. Doesn't make any difference. It recognizes itself in us, through us, and as us. And so, knowing this to be the case, I simply declare that curiosity is a gift. And knowing that it is a gift, I pursue that curiosity, knowing that it leads me to the truth. And so, any doubts or fears, I delve into them. And in delving in, that fog is dissipated. It is dissolved. It returns to that nothingness. And what remains is the truth of love, the truth of abundance, the truth of divine light shining on all people equally all of the time. And so in this love, I recognize also that that divine loves us so much. It gave us these wonderful human bodies to live in and to enjoy. It gave us that perfect pattern for health in these bodies, and the intelligence in each cell to know exactly what and how to do to maintain that perfect health. That wonderful wisdom we were given. We have received so many gifts. And yet there remains the mystery, the holy wonder. And so today, I live in the mystery. I enjoy the mystery. It is love. It is light. It is peace and understanding. It is the wisdom. Know that God is all there is. And in that knowing, I rest. It is good and very good. I let it be. It unfolds in perfect right order, in divine right timing, regardless of what I think or feel or question. I let it be. And so it is.